Texas A&M's Bush School of Government and Public Service has been a favorite place of the CIA to recruit agents and analysts. Professor Jim Olson is a big reason for that. Before he joined our faculty, he put in more than 30 years at the CIA. Much of that time was spent overseas in clandestine operations. That discussion and more on this episode of Around Texas.
The Texas A&M University system is like no other in the world. Across our great state, the system is home to 11 universities and 8 state agencies, where our people learn, teach, save lives, and make the world a better place. In our new show, you'll meet these people, you'll see where they work, and you'll experience what makes Texas and
categories. He's also incredibly talented, and as a professional, he's a national treasure. I'm Mark Welsh. I'm the Dean of the Bush School of Government and Public Service. He had this remarkable career in the intelligence business, first as a naval intelligence officer, and then as an intelligence officer and operative at the CIA. And he was so remarkably successful in that when he went to a third career, you would think he would have throttled back a little bit. But I'm of the opinion that his career as a professor and an instructor in the intelligence studies program that he built at the Bush School may be his most successful career of all. Over the last 20 plus years, he has trained and sent out generations now of new intelligence officers to carry on that work. And I don't know how you measure the impact of that, but it's significant. He's been here since the beginning. He built the most successful academic program that we've had since the school started. It was then, it is now. More students want to take his courses than any other courses in our curriculum. He's a remarkable guy, he's a remarkable colleague, and he's been the heart and soul of the Bush School since 1997. What's fascinating about Jim Olson, and Meredith, by the way, his wife, who is also a remarkable intelligence officer at the CIA, is all the things that have come out and been released from undercover and under security clearances have made all of us just fascinated by Jim Olson. But the things that will never be released made him a legend in the intelligence community.
affordable, accessible higher education changes lives, providing opportunities for generations to come. 1 in 3 students in the Texas A&M system are the first in their family to attend college. Each has his or her own story.
Okay, my name is Miranda Ventura. I am a agriculture science major with a minor in plant and soils. I am a senior here at TAMUC. So I grew up in Edcouch, Texas. Every summer, I used to leave with my grandparents to Utah, and we used to do a bunch of farm work because they were migrant workers. We would wake up at 5 in the morning and we wouldn't be back till like 4 in the afternoon. I chose Texas A&M University Kingsville because it was closest to home. And I would have stayed back home, but back home they did not have any agriculture programs, and I did see myself doing agriculture in my future career. So when I came here to Kingsville, it was basically like a home away from home. I love all my classes, I love my professors, I love everything that I do in here. I would say to a kid who would want to go to college is just do it. Don't hold back. I always thought it's fine, like you'll be okay just getting any other job. If I could go back in time, I just wish I wouldn't have that mentality. So what feels good is being a first generation college student, and I feel like I've made my family proud. And in the future, I hope that my kids and the rest of my family go to college, because I know that this is a really great experience and I would want them to go through it.
Jim, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it and appreciate your service to this country and the amazing books that you have written and the contributions you're making toward the students at the Bush School. But can you start by telling us a little bit of your background?
Sure. It's kind of an unlikely story because I came from a small town in Iowa, and I attended the University of Iowa, then went into the Navy. I was an officer aboard guided missile destroyers and frigates for 4 years. Kind of had a bug to serve, but didn't quite know what I wanted to do after the Navy. I went back to law school, and my plan was to become a small town lawyer in my home state of Iowa. But that was not to be, because in my last year of law school, I received a mysterious phone call out of the blue. Mr. Olson, we think we have a career opportunity that might be of interest to you. And that was the CIA. I'm not quite sure how they found me, but they did. And that was the beginning of a lengthy process of secret trips to Washington and background investigations, testing, polygraphs, all of that. And it ended up in my joining the clandestine service of the CIA, which meant a 31-year career undercover, doing espionage and covert action for our country overseas.
So where all have you been assigned overseas, out of country?
Right. The ones I can talk about?
Yeah. we can interview you 10 years from now. Maybe it'll be a different interview.
Yeah, the ones I can talk about would be Russia. I served right there in Moscow. I served twice in Vienna. Vienna, as you probably know, was a real hotbed of espionage during the Cold War. And then I served also in Mexico City. I was chief of station down there. And
what years were you in Mexico City?
I was there in the mid-90s.
Mid-90s, okay.
Yeah, mid-90s. And then my other big headquarters job was chief of counterintelligence.
Someone told me that when you were in Russia that you actually tapped into the direct line going into the Kremlin.
Well, that's true.
That's true. You can say that.
I can say that. It's been publicized. There have been some books written about that operation. The Russians had some top secret cables that they put underground. And they thought they were inaccessible to us. When I had the opportunity of getting free of surveillance using some pretty sophisticated disguise techniques, I was able to go down the manhole, get underneath Moscow, and tap their top secret communications cables, and that was quite a day.
Wow, well, how long were those taps on there? How long were they active?
They were on there for about 5 years, and then they were betrayed by an American CIA officer who knew about them, a man named Edward Lee Howard, and he gave them the information about the cables, and so they went and found them and stopped the tap. It was
so that was in the late 80s, maybe?
That was in the late 80s. Yeah.
Late 80s, something like that?
Yeah.
And I suppose you can't tell us about what we learned from those taps.
I can tell you we learned a lot because they thought that those cables were secure, so they talked openly. And we were getting a lot of information in and out of the Kremlin, a lot of information in and out of the KGB, a lot of information in and out of the Ministry of Defense. It was a gold mine.
So how good is our American counterintelligence to make sure that they haven't tapped into our top secret cable?
Oh, that's a sore point for me because I don't think it's good enough. That's the reason I wrote my new book, because I think we need to put more resources into counterintelligence. I have even gone so far as to say I think we're losing right now the counterintelligence war, particularly against China. But the Russians haven't gone away, and we have all kinds of other countries that are trying to steal our secrets, subvert our citizens, hack into our databases. We got a real problem.
Who is our biggest problem?
China.
Is it China?
China
above Russia?
It's several magnitudes greater. They are stealing our secrets, they're committing covert action, and their cyber attacks are something far beyond anything we've ever seen before. It's massive, it's pervasive. They have a voracious appetite for our secrets, and not just military and political secrets. They come after anything that is going to advance their economy, their industry. They steal agricultural information. In my home state of Iowa, one example, they were caught stealing hybrid corn seeds right out of the field because those seeds, proprietary information, would give the Chinese better corn yield than they were able to produce on their own. They come after medical information. You've probably seen that they've just been caught trying to hack into U.S. research.
At MD Anderson, right.
MD Anderson, but also on the coronavirus.
Is counterintelligence to Congress, and after that, of course, counterintelligence is stopping them over here. How does Congress view it as an afterthought and simply doesn't put enough money into counterintelligence as opposed to the other side?
There's kind of a political unwillingness to take on the Chinese. Even when we catch them in the act, I think we just kind of slap them on the wrist and continue business as usual.
If you were standing before a committee of Congress right now and you said, we have really big problems in counterintelligence, what would you tell them they needed to do?
We need reinforcements. We need more resources. When 9/11 happened, understandably, there was a diversion of resources into counterterrorism. We've also seen with the fall of the Soviet Union, more resources put into things like non-proliferation, counter-narcotics, organized crime, all valid places and things to do. But sometimes it was at the cost of counterintelligence. Counterintelligence is kind of invisible. You can't see what it is that we're preventing from happening. You can't see what it is that we contribute to the process. So there is a tendency to kind of steal resources from us. I think that's short-sighted. I think we've paid a price for it because we've allowed the Chinese to get too big and too active in this country.
So what do you think the possibilities are that we can put a reasonable stop to what the Chinese are doing in this country? And what I'm talking about there is, we know what happens. I mean, business goes, well, I've got to deal with China and they want me to give this intellectual property to them, or they won't let me in China, so my bottom line is, yeah, let them have the secrets. Universities do the same thing. Sure. Universities say, boy, I need graduate students here because I don't have, domestic kids getting master's degree in different things, and these are my research folks. And so they all kind of convince themselves, yeah, this is something we ought to do, and it's not. But how do you stop that?
I think we need to take a whole new look at our interactions with China. I think that we need to be more careful about whom we admit into the country, either as students or as visitors. I think we need to look at some of these American companies that are being lured into sharing proprietary technology with them. We need to stop the intelligence services that are operating here. We need to tighten up our cybersecurity because we're being drained. They are stealing a lot of classified information from our databases. So it's just a general tightening up, and I don't see any real political will to do that yet. I hope I'm wrong, but right now, the level of Chinese espionage in this country is so far advanced that we are losing. We're hemorrhaging our secrets and our technology and our research.
We have a center over here, a cybersecurity watch center, and you can look up on a screen 24 hours a day, and you can, as the earth moves across, you can see the hacks, attempted hacks coming to College Station, to Washington, D.C. and
Yes.
stuff like that. I was watching one time and I saw a hack go into Scottsdale, Arizona, and there was an FBI guy there, and I said, let me know what that was. He said, that's very strange, let me know what that was. And about 2 days later, he called me back and he said it was a Chinese guy that had rented a space in the back of a 7-Eleven in Scottsdale, Arizona, and was trying to hack Texas A&M.
Yeah, it's coming at us from every direction. And of course, the Chinese have what they call these information warfare centers run by the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, all around China. And their number one task is to hack into the United States.
Yeah. And is it still true that you can't do business in China unless you give them your technology, right?
They put a lot of pressure on you, and our corporations are out for profits, they're out for trade deals, and they're vulnerable, and all too often, unfortunately, they succumb to that kind of pressure. They give them a little bit here, and it's never enough.
Is it your experience in this country that the Chinese use Chinese nationals mostly for their spying, or their other folks?
That's a really good question, because when I was looking at it a few years ago, I could say that the Chinese intelligence services almost exclusively played the ethnic card. they would look for Chinese Americans. And then they would appeal to their cultural affinities, the shared language. They may have family members back still in China, and they would play on that and try to convince them to help Mother China. That still goes on. Chinese Americans are being singled out for targeting, but they become more brazen. And in the last several years, I've been able to document several instances where the Chinese have successfully recruited non-ethnic Chinese to commit espionage against our country.
Texas A&M Corpus Christi is a destination like no other. As an islander, you can immerse yourself in an educational environment offering more than 80 areas of study. Explore unique, hands-on learning opportunities with award-winning professors and choose from more than 150 clubs and organizations. At Texas A&M Corpus Christi, you'll earn a degree designed to impact your life and the world around you. Your island, your university.
Can you tell us some about the high-profile cases that you can talk about?
Well, I can. Unfortunately, sadly, there were several people I worked with at the CIA, I considered colleagues and friends, who betrayed us, who sold out to the Russians. And the most notorious was a man named Aldrich Ames.
Remember that.
Rick Ames. He worked for the Russians for 9 years. And his betrayal was so devastating because he knew the identities of many of our Russian assets. Courageous Russians who had put their lives in our hands to work secretly with the CIA. People I worked with in Moscow. People I respected for what they were doing. They were doing incredible service for our country by giving us top-level intelligence. Rick gave the Russians those names. And of course, their fate was inevitable. Taken to the basement of Lubyanka, put on their knees, and a bullet fired through the back of their head. We don't know for sure how many of our losses we can attribute directly to this traitor, Rick Ames, but it's probably approaching 30. So he's not only a traitor, he's a killer, because he killed them just as surely as if he put the bullets through the back of their head himself. He's in prison now. We did catch him. I think about Rick every day. He was someone that I worked with very, very closely. He worked for me twice. He did it for money. $5.7 million is the best estimate we have of how much he was paid, but it's all blood money. And it's not doing him any good in prison right now.
I thought we killed spies. We don't do that anymore? It's just, what, life imprisonment or something?
Well, there was a move at the time for capital punishment for someone as heinous as Rick Ames, but there's no real appetite for that in peacetime. So he was not given the death penalty, although many of us think that if anybody deserved it, it would be a traitor like Rick Ames. But there have been others. There have been other people I worked with at the CIA and elsewhere who did the same thing, betrayed our country for money. It's the lowest form of human life, in my opinion. As you probably know, the ninth and lowest circle of hell in Dante's Inferno is reserved for traitors.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place for them.
So how'd you catch Rick Ames?
It took us longer than it should have. We knew that we had a penetration because we lost all those people. And the only way that you can really account for that is that someone was working for the Russians. So we put a list together, and then very painstaking, I was chief of counterintelligence at the time, we started going down the list. I was on the list. And we began to eliminate people. We couldn't alert them to the fact that they were under investigation, so we had to do it very, very carefully. We had to wait for routine polygraphs to come up. And little by little, we began to zero in on a shorter list. And Rick was at the top of that list. Just because of his kind of erratic behavior, he did change his lifestyle. He began to live beyond what we thought were his visible means. So the FBI and the CIA began to look at Rick specifically. We did a trash run. We found some things in his trash that indicated that he was probably involved in espionage. On the phone taps, we could hear him talking to his wife, kind of in double talk that kind of indicated to us that something was going on. And then we caught him in the act. Shocking because we all knew how much access he'd had, how much damage he was capable of doing. And he's unrepentant, he's arrogant, he is unapologetic about the fact that he killed all these people. I mean, I just have nothing but the highest degree of contempt for all traitors, but specifically for Rick Ames.
Is there any other cases you want to talk about?
I can talk about Edward Lee Howard. He was another CIA officer who was supposed to go to Moscow, but his assignment was canceled because of a last-minute polygraph. He was drinking, he was using drugs, he'd been involved in some petty theft. He was unsuitable. We fired him, and out of revenge, he went to the Russians. And he had the identities also of some people. He is the one who betrayed that underground cable tap operation that I was involved in.
Ah.
And I shouldn't mention this, and you can cut this out if you like, but Edward Lee Howard is a graduate of the University of Texas.
Oh. Well, we won't cut that out.
No.
Well, it was probably because you were an Aggie that he decided to betray
Well,
us.
could be. Well, thank you for calling me an Aggie, because I wear that as a
22
as a badge of
years,
honor.
close enough.
Yeah.
So tell us about your latest book, The Catch a Spy, The Art of Counterintelligence.
It's been a labor of love. It's something that I've thought a long time about, that the American people need to have a better understanding of what's going on out there, the extent at which these foreign intelligence services are stealing our secrets and recruiting our citizens. I wrote the book from really two audiences in mind. First of all, the American public. Anybody who likes a good spy story, I think, will enjoy this book. But I think the American public need to have a better understanding of what's going on. Our first line of defense, I believe strongly, is a well-informed public. And I didn't think that that was being done sufficiently, so I felt an obligation to write the book. I also had in mind professionals in the field. I'm hoping that what I wrote, based on my experiences in doing counterintelligence for so many years, could be of some value to them. And then finally, we wanted to have an opportunity to simply help young people who might be interested in serving our country in counterintelligence or some other aspect of intelligence. And I found it gratifying to know that this book is already being used in training classes and in universities around the country to help young people understand better what counterintelligence is and how they might contribute to this major problem our country faces.
Well, thank you for your service to this country, and thank you for what you do for Texas A&M and the Bush School, and particularly to the young men and women that we're going to count on to keep our country secure in the future.
It's been an honor, and thank you, John, for everything you do for this great university system.
Thank you. Andy Card, welcome to the show. Andy, what did President George W. Bush see in Texas A&M, and if you could tell us something about his commitment to public service and how that translates into what he saw at the Bush School?
It was really centered around the way Aggies show respect for the people who serve this country, show respect for the people who serve Texas. And he's really proud to have the George Bush School of Government and Public Service as part of Texas A&M and producing proud public servants the same way A&M has done for years.
This place loved him and he loved them. But another place that he had a strong affinity for, obviously, was the intelligence community. And so tell us about you know, as director of the CIA, and how he sort of fell in love and with the respect of that particular community as well?
I think his favorite job was not being president of the United States. I think his favorite job was actually being director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And George H.W. Bush went over to the CIA. He was all in. He presumed it would be probably his last job in government, and he was very committed to doing it well. He was a champion of saying, you know, ours is a government of, by, and for the people, but it has got to be competent. And he made sure the institutions that he was a part of were very competent to serve the people of the United States.
So we have these two great loves of his life. Texas A&M is obviously one. The CIA and intelligence community is one. Tell us how that merged together here at the Bush School, and what role he wanted the Bush School to play in producing people for the intelligence community, and how, what would he want and what would he think about what's happening in the Bush School, particularly with regard to intelligence and counterintelligence?
Former President Bush called George Tenet, more as a former CIA director than former president, said, I'm building this school down at Texas A&M, the Bush School of Government for Public Service, and I would love to have a prominent recent retiree of the CIA assigned to help that school get started and help develop a program. And Jim Olson answered the call to duty, and President Bush was thrilled, because Jim Olson is a hero among the folks who have served at the CIA. It's probably the best public policy school in the country, especially in the area of intelligence.
What do you think the president would think about the work we're doing here with students in terms of counterintelligence?
George H.W. Bush really did love the CIA. Even when he was president, he was more involved with what was being done at the CIA than most presidents. He really took an interest, especially in the counterintelligence aspects of it. And Jim Olson, he wrote the book on how to catch a spy, and he knows the stuff inside and out. And I tell you, he's infectious as a teacher, and he really does help you understand what it means to serve in intelligence, especially in counterintelligence. And he motivates a lot of young people to answer the call to duty. You know, I think over 28% of the graduates of the Bush School go into public service. It's the highest percentage of any public policy school in the country. But a disproportionately large percentage of that number actually end up going to work in the intelligence services, not just the CIA, but also with the FBI and Homeland Security and other aspects. So they're clamoring to get the graduates of the Bush School to come work for them, and which is a great testament to technology.